All right, my fifth grade friends, today we're working on worksheet 11.3, which has to do with quadrilaterals. So I want to, first of all, go over this with you. And then I'm going to have you pause the video and copy down what I have here. But I'm going to go back and forth here for a while. We have 6 different types of quadrilaterals that we're going to talk about today. And the first one is just what we refer to as a general quadrilateral. Any figure that has 4 sides, as long as it's closed, it's not some weird figure just with 4 lines. It has to be a closed figure, is considered a quadrilateral. For example, this, if I'm drawing here, this, and that is a 4-sided figure. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. That is considered a general quadrilateral simply because it's a closed figure that has 4 sides. We also have a parallelogram that has 2 sets of parallel sides. Now, a general parallelogram would typically look something like this. You get your top, your left, your right, and then the bottom. Where the left and the right are parallel, the top and the bottom are parallel. So that is considered a parallelogram. The next one is rectangle. A rectangle has 4 right angles. Essentially, you get here, you get here, you get here. These are all right angles. That perfect 90-degree angle. Okay, that is considered a general rectangle. We also have what we call a rhombus. A rhombus has 4 congruent sides. I want to make sure you understand what the word congruent means. That's a fancy way of saying they're equal or they're the same. And by sides, we're talking about their length. So if they have 4 congruent sides, it means all sides are the same length. Now, in a rhombus, a lot of times they're equated to like maybe a little diamond shape, something like that. Okay? And if there's some indicators here, like a line through it, that's an indication that any line segment that has that little line through it, they're congruent. So I can see that all 4 of these sides are congruent, thus making this figure right here a rhombus. The next one is a square. And a square has 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides. So it's similar to a rectangle in the sense that a rectangle has 4 right angles. But to be classified as a rectangle, it does not need to have 4 congruent sides. As you can see, the left and the right are significantly smaller than the bottom and the top. But if I actually want to make a square, and we're just going to use our imagination that these are all the same length, we're going to put our little indicators there that show that all those are the same. Put our right angle symbols to show that those are right angles. And I have a square here. 4 sides that are all the same, and 1, 2, 3, 4 right angles. The last one that we're going to look at is trapezoid. Trapezoid has 1 set of parallel sides. Okay? Essentially, a basic trapezoid will look something like this. Kind of to give you an idea. That would be a basic trapezoid. And since this line is parallel with this line, of course, parallel meaning if they were to keep going forever and ever and ever, they would never touch or intersect either way. And this would be considered a trapezoid because, by definition, it has 1 set of parallel sides. All right? This is what I want you to do right now. I'm going to hold this right there. I want you to pause the video. I want you to write this down so you have these to refer to as you're working on the assignment. Quadrilateral, 4-sided figure. Parallelogram, 2 sets of parallel sides. Rectangle, 4 right angles. Rhombus, 4 congruent sides. Square, 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides. Trapezoid, 1 set of parallel sides. I will not be taking the camera back over to this board right here for the rest of the video. So you need to write it down. I need you to have it in front of you as we're working through the examples. All right, so here we go. All right, I trust that you got the point and wrote those down. Let me get this second part erased. Now, what your assignment is going to have you do today is you're going to get a picture of a quadrilateral, okay? And they're going to give you a picture of a quadrilateral, and you have to classify it in as many of those ways as you can. We have those 6 words: quadrilateral, parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, square, trapezoid. So, here we go. Let's look at number 1 here. All right, going to have something that looks like this. That's an interesting kind of a thing. Well, first of all, we know it's a quadrilateral because it's a 4-sided figure. We have to write down all the possibilities. It's a quadrilateral because it's a 4-sided figure. Well, let's see what else it is. Is it a parallelogram? Does it have 2 sets of parallel sides? No. The top and the bottom are not parallel. The right and the left are not parallel. It is not a parallelogram. This clearly does not have 4 right angles, so it is not a rectangle. All 4 sides are not the same length. There are not 4 congruent sides. It is not a rhombus. It is clearly not a square because it's not a rectangle and it's not a rhombus. So it does not have 4 right angles like a rectangle would. It does not have 4 congruent sides like a rhombus would. So it is not a square. Clearly not a trapezoid. There is not a set of parallel sides. The top and the bottom are not parallel. The right and the left are not parallel. The only one that fits here in number 1 is a quadrilateral. All right, so let's look at another one. Okay. Mr. Swack always enjoys when he gets to show off his art skills. All right, and contrary to really what the picture looks like, we're going to envision that all 4 of these are the same size. Okay, so we're looking at these. First of all, we know it's a quadrilateral because it has 4 congruent sides. Okay? As we look at some of these other ones, is it a parallelogram? Well, this one here on the right, this one here on the left, they're parallel. This one and this one are parallel. So it has 2 sets of parallel sides, thus making it a parallelogram. All right, let's look at another one. Does it have 4 right angles? Well, no, these are not really right angles. They're not the perfect L's. They don't have the little box. So it does not have 4 right angles. It is not a rectangle. Is it a rhombus? Well, a rhombus has 4 congruent sides. Remember, these indicators show that these lines are all the same length. All 4 are the same length, thus making it a rhombus. Is it a square? Well, we know it's a rhombus, so it has 4 congruent sides, but we established back with the rectangle that they are not right angles. This is not a right angle. This is not a right angle. They are not right angles, thus meaning it does not have 4 right angles, which means it is not a square. A trapezoid has exactly 1 set of parallel sides. I don't want there to be any confusion with that, 5th graders. Okay? If it has 2 sets of parallel sides, it is not a trapezoid. A trapezoid has exactly 1 set of parallel sides. So if on your definition sheet under quadrilaterals, where it says trapezoid, 1 set of parallel sides, you might want to, in case so there's no confusion, include the word exactly, where it says exactly 1 set of parallel sides. So it is not a trapezoid either. We have our 3. All right, let's look at one more. All right, let's just see how it goes here. So we're going to go with number 3. All right, get our little indicators here. Okay, so we know what that means. They all have those little indicators, meaning that they are all congruent sides, and then there's 4 right angles. So, well, let's see what we got here. Well, first of all, it's a 4-sided figure, so if we start at the top of the list, it is clearly a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. That makes it a quadrilateral. Is it a parallelogram? Does it have two sets of parallel sides? Well, I look here. Looks like the left and the right are parallel. Looks like the bottom and the top are parallel. So it does have two sets of parallel sides, thus making it a parallelogram. All right, well, is it a rectangle? Does it have 4 right angles? It sure does. 1, 2, 3, 4. It has 4 right angles. Thus, this is a rectangle. Now, is it a rhombus? Does it have 4 congruent sides? Well, we have my little indicating lines here that show they all have 2, which shows they're all congruent with each other. They all have 4 congruent sides, okay? And so we would consider this a rhombus, okay? Now, if then I say, okay, well, it's a rectangle because it had 4 congruent angles, or 4 right angles. It's a rhombus because it had 4 congruent sides, okay? Well, then it fits the definition of a square, which is to have 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides. Well, some of you may say, well, Mr. Swack, how can it be a square if it's a rectangle? I can assure you, by definition, 5th grade, even though maybe you didn't learn this back in 1st and 2nd grade with Mrs. Stevenson and Mrs. Finkbeiner, if it is a square, it is indeed a rectangle. Mr. Swack does not make that stuff up. Okay, a square is still a square. A square is actually just a special type of a rectangle. So if it's a square, all squares are also most definitely rectangles. Well, so is it a trapezoid? Well, a trapezoid, remember, has exactly 1 set of parallel sides. Meaning, since it has 2 sets of parallel sides, because it's a parallelogram, then it can't be a trapezoid. Thus, I have my list. Now, I want to point something out here, okay? Now, if you get something like this, okay, 5th grade, I want to make sure there's no confusion. If you end up getting something like this, all right, that has something here, 2 indicators here, 2 indicators here, okay, and then we have 1 here, angle measurement here, and 2 lines there. How do we read this? Well, they all have indicator lines, but these 2 just have 1, and these 2 have 2. The 1s and the 2s are not congruent. If it has 1 line, it's only congruent to those that have 1 line going through. If it has 2 lines, it is only congruent to those that have 2 lines going through. Now, this is the indicator for an angle. There's 1 kind of arch. Here there's 1 arch, meaning those 2 are congruent. Here I have 2 arches. Here I have 2 arches, meaning those are congruent with each other. This one and this one are not congruent because this one only has 1 arch, this one has 2. It's a different indicator, means a different measurement. All right, I'll be available to help you with this in class Monday, May 4, 5th grade. We'll have a good time working with quadrilaterals. Bye.